Hello, welcome to today's lecture. It's going to be all about Purim and also about Parashas Zohar, which we're going to read tomorrow. That's the Torah reading of the chapter, well, I can't remember, chapter 23, 24 in Deuteronomy and Devarim, Parashas Kisei, right at the end, where we remember what Amalek, the nation, the mortal enemy, you could say, of the Jewish people, tried to do against the Jewish people. They tried to, when we came out of Egypt, they tried to attack us, and we have to remember this forever, this attack. We're going to have to see what's so important about Amalek. If you've already heard the lecture about the Purim from last year, you'll get a good idea already, but we've got lots of new ideas. A lot of them I took today. Most of the ideas I took today from Rabbi Mendel Kessin. You should check out his channel, Torah Thinking. It's 2 words. Incredible. I get so much stuff from him. Absolutely amazing ideas. But we're going to take on his ideas. We're going to go a bit deeper into them maybe as well today. So we're going to speak today about Purim, about the idea of Amalek. I'm going to many of the details. We're going to see an amazing, beautiful idea. It's got a lot of connections with Hanukkah as well, if I remember to bring that in as well, if you heard my last Hanukkah lecture. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so we know that every festival, every Yom Tov, which is in the Jewish calendar, is not just a commemoration for an event which has happened. We've spoken about this a number of times already. Basically, every year is its own cycle, and each day, in fact, in the year corresponds to a certain spiritual reality. There is a job we have to do. I think we spoke about this a lot in Rosh Hashanah. We spoke about this a lot, about the cycle of the year, because it's the head of the year. There's a job which mankind, specifically the Jews, we're the ones basically with this task now, is to perfect spiritually the world, which means to bring God's knowledge into the world and eventually not just that people will know about God because we teach it, but the light will be brought in so powerfully that it will be automatically, the whole world will know about God and the truth about God without even having to be told. That's the ultimate level of perfection, where God is fully present in the world. We're going to speak about that a lot today as well, about the details of that. Okay, so if you've heard my lectures until now, we've got all the different festivals. You see they've got their own unique character and their own unique job to bring a certain aspect of rectification and perfecting of the universe spiritually. Where we have the idea of Pesach, is the idea of God revealing himself to the world. Shavuos, God giving the Torah, right, which is the idea of linking the light of God into the physical world, like we explained there. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, where God creates the world in the first place, etc., etc. So each one's got essential elements, essential stepping stone or key to create this tapestry where all the parts work together in their perfected state. You have the full revelation of God in the world, which is the final stage of this world, which is the state of perfection, where God's fully revealed in it. Which we spoke about many times. This is the main topic we speak about on this channel, so I shouldn't have to go into it too much, but especially look at the third keystone lecture about why God does everything. If you want to listen to that before this, then you get a much richer understanding. In fact, all the keystone lectures are really important to hear, to really appreciate the sort of things I'm going to be saying in any of my lectures. We always reference those keystone lectures in almost every lecture we do, because they really are the nucleus of everything in existence, those ideas, and everything branches out from them. So all we do is just expanding on those ideas. So we expect in Purim the different mitzvahs, the different commandments which we have on each festival should reflect the underlying idea of what we're trying to achieve on that on that festival. So therefore, we look at the laws of Purim, and we'd expect them to sort of be helping along, or to be sort of cogs in the machinery to bring to that final zenith of perfection which we want to achieve on Purim. So let's have a look at the actual mitzvos, or the commandments on which we have on Purim. We'll speak about the main four to start off with, and we'll mention a couple of sort of subcategories. First of all, we've got 4 commandments on Purim. We have to read the Megillah. That means the Book of Esther. It's called Megillas Esther, which is the story of the salvation of the Jewish people in the time of Persia about 2,500 years ago. Then we have to give presents. Jewish people have to give presents to their friends, right? Of food. We give special, besides the yearly, besides the rest of the year, we've got obligation to give charity. There's a special law of giving charity specifically on this day, besides the regular law of giving charity. Matonos Levyonim means gifts to the poor. And finally, you have Sudas Purim. We're commanded to have a feast, a big meal. It's probably the biggest meal of the year for Jews. Yeah, even the Shabbos and other festivals, we have massive sort of celebratory meals. On Purim, it's probably the biggest one we have. It could last for hours and hours and hours. Yeah, and besides this, we've got the ideas of getting drunk on Purim. So this is a detail in the Seudah, or the meal of Purim. We're meant to get drunk. And there's an interesting detail that we're meant to get drunk until we can't tell the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Orah Haman. Baruch Mordechai means blessed is Mordechai. He's the hero of the Purim story. The salvation came through him and Queen Esther, who's his cousin or niece. And Orah Haman means cursed is Haman. Haman, the evil person who tried to destroy the Jewish people in that story, who was defeated in the end. You're meant to get so drunk that you can't tell the difference between blessed is Mordechai, cursed is Haman. So very cryptic sort of thing there. So we're going to see some deeper ideas in that as well. What else is there? We've also got a very interesting custom that the children, or the adults really, dress up in costumes. What's that all about? Very strange. That's why I know there's a subscriber, non-Jewish subscriber on my channel here who likes to bring his family to have a look at the festivities of Purim. It's next Friday, by the way. If you want to come along and have a look. Yeah, because on the surface, it looks like a very exciting sort of festival. Yeah, people getting drunk, obviously, very jolly and happy. And also you've got people dressing up in a fancy dress, as they call it. But we're going to see everything in Judaism is so profound. It just blows your mind. I mean, I'm doing the lecture series on proofs for the divinity of Torah. If you just look at the profundity of the most basic ideas, it just blows your mind. You think, how can this be? This can't be a man-made thing. It's just too intricate, too profound, too deep, all the different ideas are interconnected, and it's just, yeah. Anyway, so let's give a brief story of Purim. So this is an introduction, basically, for people who don't know so much. So people who know everything, skip over to the timestamp where we actually start asking the questions. So it starts off with the king Achashverosh. He was the third king in the lineage of the newly dominating, I guess, not newly appointed, by God is appointed, I suppose. Yeah, the new world power has only been going on for about 5 years before this. You had Koresh, Cyrus, and you had Darius, Darius, the other way around. I think Darius was first. And then you had Achashverosh. Achashverosh was the third of the Persian kings, which ruled the world, basically. And he, as a consolidation for his for his rulership over basically the whole known world, 127 countries basically, which is he made a big party, and it was very ostentatious, extremely ostentatious, and invited people from all over the world, and all that. People think, wow, this Achashverosh is a big thing, because he wanted to be clever, make sure that people were not going to rebel, and he had a harmonious empire, right? And one thing which happened on that in those festivals, those meals, was he had 180-day festival. Then he had an extra 7-day festival for the people of Shushan, which was the capital city of Persia, because as a clever ruler goes, you've got to make peace and alliances with the people in the countries in your empire, but don't forget about your own people in your own backyard. They've got to feel extra special. So they had a special 7-day feast. I'm not getting the details wrong here, I'd be embarrassed. Right, I think that's how it goes. Now, in that feast, Queen Vashti, that was Achashverosh's wife, made her own sort of feasts, and for the women. Okay, it's all part of the different cogs, all the intricate sort of interconnectivity of the story. Every element of the story is an essential part of the whole story. That's what we're going to see today. Unfortunately, at that feast of Achashverosh, of the 7-day one, I think it was, right? The Jews of Shushan partook in the feast, and they shouldn't have joined in with the festivities of Achashverosh for whatever reason, even though there was kosher food there. Maybe the idea was that, yeah, it's still not befitting for Jewish persons. Should be sitting, studying, sort of like just celebrating just for the sake of it. We're going to see exactly what was going on, what the problem was. And there was our rabbis tell us that that's why they were doomed for destruction. They're written down for destruction because they partook of the feast. Then something strange started happening. It seems pretty normal until now, and then things go completely mad. There are two groups of people at the feast from different countries, and they're all boasting about whose women were more beautiful. This one said, women's from our country are more beautiful. The other one said, no, our ones. And Achashverosh heard that, right? And he said, no. Yeah, the ones where my wife's from, they're most beautiful. My wife is most beautiful, right? Now, because Achashverosh was trying to appease everyone, right? Yeah, he said, whatever anyone asks, I'll give it to them. So these two lowlives, as far as I remember the story going, they asked, we want to see your queen, undressed, fully undressed, right? So Achashverosh felt, I have to do it. So, right, okay. He should have said, okay, shut these two guys out, chuck them out, and deal with them out at the back before this picks up any steam. But what did he do? He called for Vashti. Yeah, my wife's a beautiful one. So he called her to come out with wearing, as it says in the Book of Esther, Bekeser Malchus, with the crown on her head, which means only the crown. Okay, so it's a bit, right? Very strange. And Vashti, in fact, would have come. That's how arrogant she was, and so narcissistic. She wanted to show off her beauty to everyone. However, as the Midrash tells us, just that day, she either had tzara'as, type of leprosy, a skin disease, or she actually grew a tail, and she was too embarrassed to go out. So it's interesting that, right? So that's obviously everything I say here in part of the story, there's always very deep layers of meaning behind them, but we can't go into everything here. It would just be way too much. The idea of the tail, what is it? It's not us. So she didn't come, and the king, he was drunk, yeah, and he was getting embarrassed. 180 days, and the end of the 7 days of Shushan. This is the pinnacle. This is the finale of all the effort he's given for over half a year to unite everyone, to give everyone immense respect for the great king Achashverosh, and then his wife shows him up on the very last day. Wow. Okay, so what do I do? I can't look like a total idiot. So the different ministers were probably suggesting different things, but there's one minister called Memuchon, who we know later on, according to one opinion, was actually Haman. He said, well, you've got to deal with this. Now, it just so happens that Haman had a wife who was much cleverer than him, called Zeresh. And Zeresh, because of this, you see all the different things, one thing leading to the other. Because Haman had a wife who dominated over him and outsmarted him and sort of like made him feel inferior, so Haman had this urge. It reminds you of a certain other person who wanted to destroy the Jewish people about 100 years ago. Yeah, who wanted to be a painter, and out of embarrassment and feeling of it, he was an inferior painter. He got this hatred for the Jews. Interesting parallel. Maybe there's something there. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. He's got, unfortunately, the same initial letters of his name that I do. But okay, you get the hint, right? I'm the good opposite of him. So yeah, that's how I have to frame it. Okay, AH. Right. So because of this inferiority complex, he goes and he convinces the king to kill Vashti, the queen, right? Incredible. And he says, do it now. You have to do it now because people are going to think that, the people who should be subservient can rule up against their masters, their wife against the husband. Maybe there's a hidden message that all your nations, which are meant to be subservient to you, they think, they just like a woman can, tell a man what to do. We can sort of like be like current day politicians, well, not so much now, but that the politicians are just trying to appease the populace instead of ruling over them. That's a different discussion. Maybe that was a hidden thing which Haman was using as part of his persuasion. You got to kill her, right? And make a rule that everyone has to listen to the husbands, right? The wives have to listen to the husbands. So Achashverosh carried that out, and the next day, when he sobered up, this wine is not good, and we're going to see that's part of why we get drunk on Purim. It's one of the many reasons, but the miracle started because of drunkenness. But here it starts with the drunkenness of Achashverosh. He was intoxicated, but once he gave a decree to kill Vashti, she had to go. Right. So then he had a problem, right? He was very sad. He didn't have a wife anymore. He missed Vashti, right? And they tried to cheer him up. Said, "Why didn't you get a new queen?" Right? So okay, fine, we get a new queen. So he makes a beauty contest to find the most beautiful girl, right, in the whole of the 127 countries, sort of like a Miss Universe sort of contest, and he's going to marry the winner, right? It turns out I think he ended up marrying quite a few of them. Again, I can't remember the exact details. I think once he tried some of them out, basically, and once he tried them out, they were kind of stuck, because you can't have someone who was with the king going to someone else. Anyway, so eventually they had this girl, Jewish girl. They went around looking for different girls around the empire, and they found Esther, who was hiding. Esther was actually married to Mordechai. It was his cousin or niece, I think, which is one of the permitted marriages of a relative. Yeah, obviously it's a sister, mother, daughter are forbidden. Auntie is also forbidden, but a niece is actually permitted in Jewish law. And she was married. She wasn't an unmarried woman, so it's very strange here, right? So all the girls who were going to this competition were young girls who were unmarried, who'd never been with anyone, they were virgins essentially. And now you have this woman who's an older woman, right, who wasn't so beautiful, according to what the rabbis say. She has a sort of a greenish complexion, and she's married, and she still got taken. Very strange. Okay. And she won the competition, and she ended up being the queen. But she wouldn't speak to Achashverosh about her background or anything. So this caused an infatuation of Achashverosh with Esther. Maybe she wasn't putting herself out like the other girls were, trying to look as attractive. So, oh, this is a mysterious girl. She's hiding something. Yeah? This comes from her ancestor, which was Benjamin, who was a daughter of Rachel, but also they're very, very hidden, very internal people, right? I'm not sure if we've given a lecture about this, because Joseph was also the other son of Rachel, and he was the one who was always sort of within himself, not going out. As Rachel's sister Leah, she had a different characteristic. She used to go out. As a story when Dinah, the daughter of Leah, got captured, Rashi says there, Dinah and Leah both were types of women to go out of the house. These are very deep ideas. Maybe we'll give a lecture on that one day. Two different characteristics of Judah and Joseph, who came from these two sisters, Rachel and Leah. Yeah. The two messiahs come from Judah and Joseph. Right. Okay, so we'll leave that for the time being. So, where were we? Yeah, so that Esther had this sort of innate sort of modesty, or like, not showing off about herself, sort of a humble sort of personality. And Achashverosh found this very interesting. Right, now, next part of the story is, and then Achashverosh was happy. He forgot about Vashti, and he was happy with his new wife. Then a story happened that there were two people plotting to kill King Achashverosh, called Bigsan and Teresh, and Mordechai, which is the previous husband of Esther, right, who's one of the Anshe Knesset, the men of the Great Assembly. We spoke about this in the lecture about Hanukkah, which just gave Hanukkah number 3. Yeah, he was a great scholar, sage, and he was actually on the Beis Din, on the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is the grand Jewish court. Now the rule is that if you're adjudicating between people who speak a different language, you have to be able to understand their language. If you're a judge, you can't say, "Oh, can I have a translator? Right? Please translate what this person's saying." That's not good enough. You have to actually understand the language yourself. So these two people, Bigsan and Teresh, came from, I can't remember where they were from. They came from a country where they had a very specific language that not many people spoke, especially not in Shushan, the capital of Persia. Right? And Mordechai, he knew all the languages, so he understood what they were saying. Yeah, they weren't trying to hide what they were saying. They could speak in their native tongue without other people understanding. So they, we've had enough of this King Achashverosh. He drives us mad because of his new Queen Esther. He's forcing us to be on at all hours of the morning to be there to help him for whatever reason, right? And they were being sleep deprived, and they said, right, we've got to do away with this king. We can't keep functioning like this. Let's assassinate him. So Mordechai comes and he hears about this, and he tells Queen Esther about the plot, and Esther told Achashverosh in the name of Mordechai, "Oh, Mordechai, my uncle," or whatever, maybe she didn't say who it was in relationship to her, but she identified him as Mordechai, one of your ministers of the because Mordechai was one of the officers in Achashverosh's army, so he was a high-ranking minister himself. He told me this plot about Bigsan and Teresh. They want to kill you, and he heard about that, he caught them, he executed them, and he wrote down in the Book of Remembrances that Mordechai saved the king. Then we have the chapter 3. That's all the first 2 chapters, basically. The Haman rises to power, and he convinces the king Achashverosh to kill the Jews, basically. Want details? Read the Book of Esther yourself. Then the Mordechai hears about this terrible decree. He tells the Jewish people to fast and to repent. And he tells Esther, go to the king to plead on the behalf of the Jews, right? And the Jewish people fasted for 3 days before, so Esther will be successful. So she went in to the king after 3 days, and he accepted her. It was a big question whether she would actually get the death penalty for just walking in uninvited to the king, despite being his wife, still a king. And she said, please, I want to ask you something very, very important. Please tell me what. Yeah. I want to have a meal with you, me, and Haman, Prime Minister Haman. Okay? Very strange. Okay, but he agreed to it. He got his mind thinking a bit. Rashi explains that he says, what's going on here? Why Haman? Strange. At this point, Haman was raised to the Prime Minister. He had the seal of the king. In fact, he had power over Achashverosh. Right, so Achashverosh might have been scared of him or something like that, but he was a very, very powerful man. Basically, Haman had the power of the whole empire, essentially. And Haman, when he came home, he complained to his wife, and he said, "I've got everything. I've got so much riches, children, honor, but it means nothing as long as I see this Mordechai who's sitting in the gates of the king, and he doesn't bow down to me. Everyone else bows down to me, right? That's how important Haman gets, the people bowing down to him, like a deity, in fact. He said, bow down to me, I am your God, sort of thing. Mordechai refused. He was the only one who refused. He said, I don't like this Mordechai. And I can't just kill him. It looks petty. I've got to kill all the Jews, right? That's how the whole thing to kill all the Jews came about. But I said, I want something special for Mordechai. I'm going to build a gallows, which is 50 amas high, 50 cubits high. That's very significant, the number there. We're going to speak about that. And the servants, the civil servants, built up this gallows, right? So everything's in place now. And now the flipping point where everything turns. So we've got all this disaster, sort of impending disaster for the Jewish people coming now. But then King Achashverosh, after having the invitation to the meal for Haman and Esther, he was bothered by that. What's going on? So one night he couldn't sleep. It was actually the night of Pesach, right? Passover. One of the many things which happened on Passover throughout the ages. And he called to his scribe to read me a book, right? Or maybe he was thinking, Rashi gives 2 alternative explanations. He was thinking, maybe Haman's plotting to kill me and marry Esther, and they're going to be the new king and queen. Maybe Esther's part of Haman's nation. Maybe I don't know where she comes from. So he's getting suspicious. Surely someone would have heard some sort of plot against me. So he said, open the Book of Chronicles. Maybe I haven't rewarded someone who did good to me, and now he's saying, oh, what's the point of warning Achashverosh, King Achashverosh, of any plots against him? He doesn't care about me, doesn't appreciate me. Right, so they took up the Chronicles, and they just so happened to open the book where Mordechai was there. On the page, it said, Mordechai saved the king from Bigsan and Seresh many years ago, and he hasn't been rewarded. What reward has been done? And the person said, who was reading it, said, no, it doesn't say anything has been done for him. Just at that time, in the middle of the night, Haman comes in, right? He wants to convince the king to allow him to kill Mordechai on the gallows. But he doesn't get the chance, because the king says, oh, Haman, you're here. Let me ask you a question. If someone did something really good to you, right? Sorry, that's not how he said it. Yeah, he said, someone who the king really likes and wants to give him a big reward, what would you recommend that I give him? So Haman was thinking, oh, it must be talking about me. It's just, he just wants to make it look objective. So, yeah, okay, give him this. Giving it to you. So, okay, right, let's think big. He rides the king's horse, right? Remember, Haman had everything. So, what could be more than what he has already? So, the king's horse, with the king's robe and the king's crown, riding through the street, and someone pulling the horse in front of him and announcing, this is what is done to someone who the king likes, who wants to honor, who the king wants to honor. And then, to Haman's shock, Achashverosh says, great idea. Go, take all this stuff which you said, the horse and the clothes, and do that to Mordechai, and you be the person to announce how special Mordechai is. And Haman was shocked. This is the person he just came in to ask to kill, and now the king wants to honor him, and he's honoring him with the biggest honor possible, because I thought of this honor myself. Haman's thinking, oh no, what's going to go on here? Right, so the whole story, Haman had to do it. It's part of that procession. Haman's daughter assumed that Haman was riding on the horse, and Mordechai, the mortal enemy of Haman, was the one leading him. So she took a chamber pot, which had the appropriate contents in it, let's put it like that, and she emptied it from the window onto the person who was pulling the horse. And then she realized, what? That's my father. He just poured it on Haman, her own father, thinking he was Mordechai, and Mordechai was the one riding the horse. So everything was back to front. This is how God was flipping everything upside down. And she got so distraught, she jumped out the window with the contents of the potty, and she killed herself. So Haman had a very bad day, just when he thought, I'm going to get to the pinnacle of my greatness, I'm going to kill my only enemy, then I'm going to be the supreme leader of the whole world without any resistance. His daughter dies. He gets to lead his mortal enemy through the street with the biggest glory possible, right? And he ends up doing it with a whole load of dung and whatever on his head. He gets home and has a discussion with his friends and Zeresh, his wife. It's interesting, if you look at the word there, it implies that Zeresh wasn't his friend. With all of his beloved ones and Zeresh, his wife, right? He didn't like his wife, right? And she warned him, she was clever. She said, well, you should be careful. If he's Jewish, you've got to be careful. Because if you try to bring him down, you're going to be the one who's going to get dragged down with him. Because that's the way the Jewish people work. Either they are dominating, right? Or they're being downtrodden by everyone. So when we do the will of God, as it says in the rabbis many times, there's no nation greater than the Jews. And when we're not doing the will of God, then we're the lowest of all the nations. We're the ones which are downtrodden and easily abused and taken advantage of, as history shows. Right? So he said, but you've got to be careful, because it looks like Mordechai's winning here, and if he wins and you push it, you're going to be absolutely destroyed. So you be careful. Right? So there wasn't time to react, because the messengers of the king came in and said, quick, bring Haman. Yeah, he's been invited to a feast with the king and Esther, right? I can't remember. I might be mixing up a bit of the chronology there because there was two feasts. I think maybe one of them he already went to. And Esther already asked for the second feast, maybe to get the king more intrigued. I can't remember the exact order. Okay, you can look in the Book of Esther. It's pretty clear the order there. And then, finally, in the second feast, he comes in, and he's stinking. He didn't change his clothes for the king, and he's got all disgusting stuff. And Achashverosh obviously is not very impressed, but it is what it is. Then Esther says, "I plead with you, the king." Yeah, the king said, "I'll give you anything. Just ask away." There's someone who's plotting to destroy my people, right? And Achashverosh says, "What? To destroy your people? My beautiful, wonderful Queen Esther?" And he didn't know who this people was. Who is this person? So Esther said, right? She wanted to say, "You, you're the one who made the decree," right? So it's a very dramatic part of the reading of the Megillah. Everyone gets excited for this bit. Ish, Tsar v'oyev, the man who's the afflictor, v'oyev, the enemy. And she was about to point to Achashverosh, and the angel, the rabbi said, the angels shifted their hands, so she's pointing at Haman. Ish Tsar v'oyev, Haman, there, right? This evil man Haman, he wants to destroy my people. And Haman was completely shocked. He was absolutely dumbstruck. So what? Because he just had the realization he'd been plotting to kill the Jews, and no one knew who Esther's nationality was, and Esther was the queen, but she came from the Jews. So I'm trying to kill the queens. Oh my goodness, this is not good, right? And now the queens accused me, right? And but Achashverosh, despite everything, he still respected and feared Haman, right? So what am I going to do? So he said, "Oh, what can I do?" Achashverosh was confused. As the story goes, according to the Midrashim, there's extra details. He went into the garden, beautiful garden with the orchards and everything, just to calm down, right? And he saw that, hey, what's happened to my garden? Yeah, all the trees are half of them have been chopped down. It's ruined. My beautiful garden. So I think there's some angels who are actually cutting down the trees or something like that, according to the Midrash. Yeah, and he said, well, we had to cut down these trees because Haman wanted a gallows, right? What did he want the gallows with? To kill Mordechai. Said, 1 minute. This is all part of the Midrash. It's not explicit in the text, but this is what the rabbis describe his thought process. Haman wants to kill Mordechai? Mordechai is the one person who saved me by warning me about an assassination attempt. And Haman, who I already suspect is trying to kill me, wasn't sure. I had my suspicions. Why? Maybe him and Queen Esther were colluding, right? And maybe that's why Mordechai hasn't warned me, because I didn't reward him. He's thinking. Right? So he didn't get that nice relaxation where he could come back to himself and act sort of rationally. On the contrary, this made things worse. You see, wow, Haman really is trying to assassinate me. He's trying to kill the one person who protected me. So he goes back in, and he's trying to kill all the Jews. Maybe the Jews are, maybe he thought maybe the Jews were good people. I don't know. I don't remember that detail. In Achashverosh's thoughts, according to the rabbis. Commentaries. So he goes back in, and just at that moment, just before he goes back in, Haman falls down. He starts pleading with Queen Esther. He kneels by her bed. They used to recline on beds there when they had a feast, sort of like the Romans did, sort of like leaning, right? So they lean on one side and sort of eat with the other hand, right? And Queen Esther was, obviously very, intent on getting Haman in trouble, and he was pleading with, "Please, Esther, please, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was your people. I would never have done it if I'd known." Yeah, but then, according to the rabbis, it's explicit in the text this happened. The question is, why did Haman do it? Haman fell on top of the bed where Esther was. So it looked like she was trying to take Esther, so to speak, right? While the king was right outside. So the king comes in, he thinks that Haman and Esther are plotting against him, and then he sees Haman on top of Esther on the bed, and Haman was desperately trying to get up. He couldn't because the angel was pushing him down, invisible angel, right? And he couldn't speak, right? So naturally you could say he was just stunned, dumbstruck, and he couldn't speak, whatever. The Haman and then Achashverosh said, "Do you want to take my wife with me while I'm in the house? You crazy?" And even so, he didn't want to kill Haman, because this hold which Haman had over him, maybe he loved Haman a lot or feared him, he still didn't want to kill him. But then Charvoina, right? Charvoina was, well, look up. I think it was Doniel or Daniel. I think he ended up being, or maybe he was Hassach or something. Charvoina could be Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. I can't remember who it was. Right, but anyway, Charvoina, whoever he was, or maybe it was just someone else, he said, one of the servants of the king, he said, "Look," because Achashverosh was thinking, "Oh, what should I do now? Well, maybe wait till tomorrow. Okay, I can't really think how to deal with this. Maybe I'll get my advisors around, think of how to deal with Haman." But then Charvoina said, "Well, you look, this tree which Haman made to kill Mordechai, look, it's standing there in view of the palace, right? The palace, you could see it. This new construction." So Achashverosh, in his state again, like he did with Vashti, like in a state of drunkenness, right? He impulsively sentenced her to death. He did the same thing here with Haman, right? And Haman was the one who caused Esther to be the queen by telling Achashverosh to kill Vashti, right? So hang him on the tree, and that was it. So then that's how the salvation came. And Haman was now seen as the enemy of the state and the enemy of the king. He got killed. Charvoina made sure that Achashverosh had an easy sort of association. What should I do with him? Oh, kill him, right? Oh, especially he wanted to kill my friend Mordechai, right? My most loyal subject, Mordechai. He wanted to kill him. Let's kill him on that, right? So that's how the story goes. And then they did, later on, a few months later, almost a year later, they had the whole battle on the day where the Jewish people were meant to get killed, where they were meant to be, the decree of Haman and Achashverosh was that anyone should go and kill all the Jews in all the 127 states. Basically, you have permission to do a pogrom in every single place you find a Jew, just kill them, right? So the Jews stood up and fought. And so after this whole story happened, not everyone felt compelled to do it, right? Because I can't remember. There was a second. Right? He couldn't rescind the order to kill the Jews, so he basically gave the whole household of Haman over all the possessions, all the lives and everything there, into the hands of Esther. And so everyone would know already, oh, okay, so Achashverosh doesn't really want us to kill the Jews, does he? Because he's now like saying, oh, Esther's good and the Jews are good. And then he let her write a second message in the name of the king to tell the Jews are able to stand up for themselves, and they should fight against any of their enemies who tries to kill them. So that's how the whole sort of decree to destroy the Jews got sort of rescinded and got dealt with. And because of the miracle, the killing of Mordechai, the fact that Esther became the queen in the first place, and she was able to influence the king, to save the Jews, we celebrate Purim to commemorate that amazing story. Okay, and there's many commandments connected with it. And some of the commandments are basically written in the Book of Esther, to read the Megillah Esther every year, twice, and once by night, once by day. The Purim starts at night. They're called Jewish days start by sunset. So once by night, and then the following morning we read the Megillah again. The Megillah meaning the scroll of Esther. Right. We also have to give presents to our friends of food. We have to give charity to the poor, and we give, and we have a su'udah, like we said before. That's all in the book there. And it says that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves kimu v'kibla hayudim, right, to keep the Torah, essentially. That's what we're going to speak about today. It says they accepted upon themselves to keep these 2 days of Purim and Shushan Purim. There's 2 days, one for most places, which keeps on 14th, which this year will be next Friday, and the 15th for cities which were walled at the time of the story, or the time when Joshua came into the land of Israel originally after the time of Moses. Whatever, that discussion is a completely different topic, with also incredibly deep ideas. And yeah, it's a shame I can't say everything. Yeah, very frustrating, very painful for me, these lectures. I have to not say so much. It's connected so much with today, but I just can't do too many details. Right. So we got they kept these 2 days. So that's why today Jerusalem keeps the 15th. So they'll be keeping it on the Sabbath. The Purim they keep on Sabbath next week, whereas everywhere else in the world will keep it on the Friday. Okay, and right, and then the Megillah finishes off. It speaks about the war, about the festival, right, and the killing of the 10 sons of Haman. That's one of the highlights of the reading of Megillah, because if you actually look at the Megillah, it's got the 10 sons listed one underneath each other. So it's usually on the page of the Megillah. Maybe get a picture of that. Here we go. This is a picture of what a Megillah looks like. You see, this is the parchment here, and it's got written ink. And look, this is what the page usually looks like. So we go like here. These are all different pages, different columns. This is chapter 9 in the Megillah, so it's quite near the end. But then you have the Jews, they killed 500 people in the capital city, Ve'es and Parshandosa, Dalphon, Asposa, Perosa. And the idea is the person who's reading the Megillah is meant to do all these 10 names in one breath, because our tradition is that all the 10 sons, that's the 10 sons of, what have I done here? Right, the 10 sons of Haman are over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is Ve'es, means and, essentially, right? And Aseres means 10. B'nai Haman, the sons of Haman, right? So this is what it usually looks like inside the Megillah. But for this page, this is the one that everyone's waiting for. Can you imagine? He's basically read 8 chapters non-stop. The reader loud, so everyone can hear in the synagogue. And then he gets to this bit, and he has to read the whole lot in one breath. That's like 24, 25 words. Yeah, Chamesh Me'is Ish, that's 3 words, plus the 10 sons, that's another 20 words with the words Ve'es before each one. Right, so it's Aseres, there's 24 words they have to read. Interesting, 24 books of the Tanakh, interesting. Don't know if there's any significance there. So you hear them like wheezing at the end. Right, and he's like gasping for breath, and it's all a lot of fun. Right. Anyway, yeah. So that's near the end. The 10 sons of Haman get killed on the gallows, one below another. So they're all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they all. I think they got the. I don't know how it worked. They all got killed and hung at the same time. I don't think they got strangled. I think they got their heads chopped off. Right. But basically, they all died at the same moment, so that's why we have the tradition to say it all in one breath. Again, very deep ideas. Not going into it. Restrain myself. Right, okay. And that is essentially the end of the Megillah Esther. Chapter 10 is very short. Speaks about going back to normal. Achashverosh made some tax allowances in order to show Esther how much he appreciated her, in order to get her to tell her where you're from, but thankfully she didn't tell him. And it speaks about Achashverosh putting taxes back on again, right, after he's done his bribery attempt. And it speaks about and Mordechai, the great Mordechai was very great in the house of Persia now, and his words are written in the books of Persia. Okay. That is essentially the whole book of Esther we've just gone through. Okay, now the question is, do I make a separate video with all the deep ideas? I'm going to do what I usually do, unfortunately, which means less people will watch the video because they see a 2-hour video, but let's see if we can do it quickly, because there's a lot to speak about today. So now we're very well versed in the book of Esther. Let's now try thinking deep into the idea of what the festival of Purim represents. What is the spiritual reality which we're trying to tap into today? Well, on Purim. So why read the Megillah? What's the significance of it? The giving of presents, giving of charity to poor people, eating the meal, getting drunk, not being able to tell the difference between Baruch Haman, I'm jumping the gun, Baruch Mordechai or Haman, blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. Is it the wrong way around there already? You must be drunk, getting in the Purim spirit already. And also, what was the other one we mentioned? Oh, the reading of, right, on the morning of Purim, we read from chapter 18, I think, in the Book of Exodus. I think it's chapter 18, where we speak about the 17, I think, end of 17, where we speak about the war of Amalek when the Jews came out of Egypt, and of course tomorrow on the Sabbath we read we read the commandment, which is in Kisetse, like we said before in Deuteronomy, to destroy the memory of Amalek. Okay, so we don't do that nowadays. We don't know who Amalek is exactly, and that's something which is going to be a final war where the people of Amalek and the Jewish people are going to be fighting, and our commandment is to wipe them out. And we're going to see why we do that, because remember, it's not very Jewish, doesn't really ring with the Jewish idea of like having mercy on all creation. So why we commanded to wipe out a whole nation? Very strange. We're going to see how that ties in. Okay. And getting drunk, and we said there was one more. Oh yes, of course, the thing which everyone remembers about, because I'm always thinking deeply beyond the surface, right? And this is the most visceral sort of thing which we have on Purim, is everyone dressing up, of course. Right? So what's the idea of these? How do they tie in? Obviously, what is the message of Purim itself? Why did the Jews deserve to get destroyed? Based on the fact that they ate from the Sudas Achashverosh, the meal of Achashverosh. There are many sins which, unfortunately, Jews sometimes do. Why was this such a tragic one, right? And there have been many times where the Jews have been persecuted through history. We're going to speak about that in one of our proof series to show the prophecies of anti-Semitism, right? And how precise they are. Right, look out for that one. I've been working on it for a while now. It's been very hard to get in order because just so many different things I can bring into each series, each lecture in that series. Got to work out a way of doing it concisely. So hopefully next week we'll be able to do that one. but we've been saved from many persecutions throughout history. In fact, there have been so many Purims, there have been sort of minor Purims, which throughout the generations, Jewish people have celebrated in different parts of the world. They got saved from this pogrom, this decree, they call it a little Purim there. So why is this festival one of the institutions of the Jewish law? This one, we've got laws. We have to read Megillah. We make a blessing on it, which is a serious thing. It's not just a commemoration. It's a real festival. It's one of the books of the Tanakh, of the Old Testament. The Book of Esther says that to do this, right? There's also some other interesting ideas. If you remember on Shavuos, about Pentecost, the day where the Jewish people got the Torah, 50 days after Passover, we have a similarity to Purim here, right? It says in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that each festival you can decide whether you want it purely for yourself, to enjoy yourself, to have a nice festival, a party, whatever, a feast, or you can dedicate the whole day for spiritual pursuits of prayer and learning. That's according to one opinion. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua said, no, you should split it half-half. But even Rabbi Eliezer agrees that on Shavuos you need something for yourself as well. And the Talmud carries on and says, and similarly on the Sabbath and on Purim. So these three festivals have got in common the idea that you have to physically enjoy yourself on these festivals, right? So it can't be very like I'm going to be very stringent and ascetic, and I'm going to just fast the whole day and just study the Holy Torah. No, you've got to have something physical. You've got to have a nice meal, especially in Purim. It's explicit in the verses. You have to have a feast, right? It also says that Purim is the only festival, if I remember correctly, which is not going to be nullified in the future, in the world to come, whatever this means. We're looking at the message here, right? All the other festivals will be insignificant, let's say, right? Whether we have to keep them at all, that's a different question. But they will sort of pass away. But Purim will be a permanent. What's the idea of Purim being a permanent festival? And see that Purim is very, very important. That's to say the least. Why do we read about Amalek before and on Purim? And in fact, this is ironic that it's the only, even though this is a rabbinical festival, right? But reading about Amalek, you have to do at least once a year. That's mandated by the Torah explicitly in Deuteronomy 20, was it 25? Was it? Yeah, right at the end of chapter 25. Better double check in case someone wants to look it up. Yeah, it's the last three verses of chapter 25 in Deuteronomy. And here it is for your convenience with Rashi's commentary, which is quite long. The first two verses there, and it's the third verse over here. Okay? Never to forget. Don't forget, right? Sounds like another time where people wanted to destroy the Jews. Never forget. But this is the real never forget. Don't forget what Amalek wanted to do. Right? They're the real Nazis, they say. Right? The real enemies of the Jews are the Amalekim. And we're going to see why today. There's going to be a lot of overlap with the previous last year's Purim lecture, so this you'll see much deeper aspects of it if you remember that one, right? So it's interesting. So we commanded in that, to remember, right? And the rabbis, using exegesis, remember with your mouth. That means you have to make it a remembrance. That means every year you have to make sure you don't forget it by reading out these three verses every year. So that's what we do on the Sabbath. It's very interesting, and this is connected with Purim. Yeah, we actually read the other one, the one in Exodus, we read on Purim Day, just before we read the Megillah, and this in Deuteronomy we read on the Sabbath before Purim, which is tomorrow. So what's the idea of this deep connection between Amalek and Purim? Next question number 7. Keeping a note here. Why did Haman make a tree of 50 amas? Interesting. The Megillah points out, the Book of Esther says explicitly, let's make a tree, a gallows, a tree to hang Mordechai on, 50 amas, 50 cubits. Okay, who cares how tall it was? Just make a gallows. Okay. So now we're going to see that every event connects with the spiritual reality where we're trying to fix something, which means through our free will we can tap into the energy of that festival, and we can use it to rectify a problem or to bring a certain energy, divine energy of correction or rectification of the creation, which has its focal point on that day. That means you're hitting sort of like a big opportunity, let's put it like that, to bring a certain type of revelation of God's presence into the world. On each day of the year, especially the festivals have got a special power, and each one's got their own individual facet they're trying to bring out on that day of this revelation of God, because it's very complex. We're not just like, let's bring God in. No, there's different elements, different ideas which we have to be aware of, and for us to bring down into the world, right? Like we said before, on Passover, this idea of birth, Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, is the idea of God's creation, right? And like on Shavuos, is the idea of God's connection to the world, to mankind, right? With his message to mankind, at the giving of the Torah, right? But there's free will, and that means that we can either tap into it, or there can be some sort of damage if not used correctly. Okay? So have a look at what's going on Purim. Purim is a very interesting chazal, a very interesting piece in the Talmud, which says that when the Jewish people received the Torah at Mount Sinai, which we've spoken about in our proofs lecture recently, the 12 approaches to show the strength of that, that's the reliability of that story being an actual event. The Jewish people beforehand, when they were asked, Moses transmitted God's request, do you want to accept the Torah? He went to all the nations of the world. They all said, what's in it? Not so interested. And the Jewish people said, well, God's offering us his message for mankind? Yeah, sure. Right? Now said, let's do it. We'll listen later what the details are. Yeah? If you don't want to know the details, no, who cares? We trust God. God, we're cleverer than God. Right? So the humility of the Jewish people caused them to be able to accept the Torah unquestioning. And that was a very big merit for them, because they accepted the Torah with love. Right? However, the Jewish people, the Pasuk says, Tachas Hahor, that the Hashem put the Jewish people gathered under the mountain, which translates loosely at the foot of the mountain, but it can literally mean under the mountain. And the rabbis learn from this that God actually picked up the mountain and hovered it over their head and said, you know how important Torah is, I know you accepted it, but you have to accept it, right? Because if you don't, then boom, that's going to be your burial place, right? That means your existence, in fact, the existence of the whole world, depends on you accepting the Torah. So it's not an option. Even though you've optionally accepted it, which is great, but you have to realize that this is a necessary part of the process of creation and bring the world to perfection and its final purpose. So we see, according to one the Midrash, Midrash Tanchum, I think it was, he explains what's going on here. There's actually two parts to the Torah where the Jewish people were asked to accept. When it came to the written Torah, the Jewish people said, Nasa v'nishma, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, God says, of course we'll do it. Yeah, but when it came to the oral Torah, right, the oral Torah, which we're going to see what that's referring to specifically, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that means the details of the Torah, that means things which is not written in the 5 books, they were hesitant, right? And on that, God said, you've got to accept that as well. You have to accept it, and I'm forcing you to accept it, essentially. So there was a bit of damage done. There was a negative aspect which happened at that point where the Jewish people, even though they accepted both Torahs, the written and the oral one, they only did it under coercion. And there's a problem there. We have to fix that problem. So why did they even reject it? What was so bad about the oral Torah as opposed to the written one? Okay, so one explanation could be that written Torah is very easy. Even non-Jews can learn the written Torah very easy, just reading. Most of them are stories or laws, pretty straightforward. Nothing so hard, yeah. But the oral Torah is full of, as I've showed you before, some of my books, yeah, full of millions of details where there's a lot of fine-tuning in the commandments, and there's a vast number of different ideas connected with every commandment. It's very hard to get all the details clear. You have to spend hours and hours learning this. You have to spend your whole life studying it. That's why we're commanded to learn Torah our whole life. That's a main occupation of Orthodox Jews, right? When they're not working, or eating, or doing anything else, doing the commandments, we go back to learning the Torah. Right? A nation of scholars, or the people of the book, as they say, right? Which is ironic because they were the people of the oral law, so the people of the mouth as well. So, right. So why did they reject it? Yeah, because it was hard. Okay, but there's something else. Rabbi Kessin brings out this aspect of it. They didn't reject the whole oral law, right? Or they didn't need coercion for the whole oral law, because the written law, remember they said, we will keep the Torah, not just learn the Torah. We'll keep it. That means keep the commandments. But you can't keep the commandments without the oral Torah. How do you keep Shabbos? Keep it, don't know. I do a dance with something funny on my head or whatever. No, there's a positive commandments of Shabbos. You have to remember it when it comes in and when it goes out. Make a declaration, the Kiddush and the Havdalah. There's a negative commandments. Do not do the 39 prohibited types of constructive work. You can't cook, you can't light a fire, can't carry in the street. You can't plow, you can't water plants, etc. Can't cook, bake. You can't dye, you can't sew, right? You can't build, right? I can't write or erase, right? Etc. 39 types of work, constructive work, where you're changing the thing, okay? But that's all part of the oral Torah. It's not written in any of this. Carrying and lighting fire is written in the Torah, but the other 37 are not mentioned, right? So obviously, and when it says, you can only eat the animals if you slaughter them as I have commanded. It doesn't say anywhere in the written Torah any details of how to ritually slaughter, do a kosher slaughtering of an animal to make it permitted for eating. That's all in the oral Torah. So obviously they didn't have problems with that part. The part of the oral Torah they had problems with were in the mitzvos bein l'chavero, the commandments between man and his friend. Right, with man and another Jew, even non-Jews, contained with this whole Choshen Mishpat, Even Ezer, how to deal with a wife, right? So there's a whole massive book just on that. The Choshen Mishpat, which is the sort of the monetary financial law, right? It's not that they didn't want to keep that. Obviously, they wanted to be moral, ethical societies. Obviously, you've got to deal with people, with have to repay loans, etc. How to buy and sell, what activates a sale, for example, right? Stealing, what's called stealing, what do you do if someone did steal, how do you correct it, and there's so many millions of details throughout the codes of Jewish law. So it wasn't the details which were necessarily a problem either. But the problem is, why do you need the Torah to tell us this, right? I understand that I don't know how to fix certain spiritual realities and or to be careful not to damage them. So I need, keep this festival, keep the Sabbath, wear tzitzis, put the tefillin on, right? Because each one of these does things which are not tangible to the human mind. So obviously, you need God to tell you what to do. But to act morally and ethically in an ethical society, even non-Jews can do that. That's not a problem. You don't steal. You could think of it, the Hammurabi codes bring a whole, set of laws, which the human mind can develop themselves. So they didn't understand the necessity of the oral law in terms of the details of how to make a society where people get on with each other. Right? Now, there's 3 levels of laws. There's 3 types of laws. You can have something which is the law, a legal sort of aspect of the law, where if it's written on the books, don't cross the road, don't park here between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's breaking the law. Okay, that's a law. It's arbitrary, but it probably has a reason, right? But if you look at some of the laws, someone showed me the sort of list of different laws, which are completely mad, which just wouldn't apply today at all, right? You can't go with a horse and cart on this day between this hour. Without something, and it came because of one story which happened once, so they made a whole law out of it. So sometimes the law can just be irrelevant or contrived, or arbitrary, right? But then you have laws which are category 2, just, right? As we know, some laws can be very unjust, right? Like, for example, if you compare like murder to embezzlement, right, of a big company. Embezzlement of a big company, you could get 20 life sentences or something like that. Was it Bernie Madoff or something? Had like over 100 years in jail because he made his Ponzi scheme, right? Person kills someone, 25 years. That's a life sentence. That's not just at all. But that's legal. It can have flaws. But something which is just, you look at the proportionality of how bad the thing the person did, and you respond fairly. A person damages someone, you pay for the damages. You borrow from someone who refused to pay up, you force him to pay up. This person had to pay legal fees in order to extract that because you refused to go to the courts, right? So maybe you have to pay for the legal fees. That's all just. There's a 3rd level of laws where you've got a righteous law. Now, in the Torah, in Exodus chapter 23, I think, right? It says tzedek, tzedek tiradof. Yeah, you must run after righteousness. Tzedek is the same word as tzedakah, which means giving charity, being righteous to the poor. So tzedek, you have to run after righteousness, and this means you've got to go after righteous laws. That means the laws of the Torah, even the monetary ones, right, actually don't just address a certain moral justice. They actually achieve the same perfection of the world which the spiritual commandments do. The mishpatim, the financial laws do the same thing somehow, right? They bring the world to its purpose in line with God's plan. So just like a person putting on the phylacteries, the tefillin every day causes amazing spiritual energies which come down to the world and fixes certain different negative sort of problems with the world, spiritual problems of the world, which result in physical problems as well, because the physical is just a result of the spiritual. So we're fixing that. But when a person pays back his loan on time, a person's careful not to take something which maybe he didn't get permission to use, that creates a spiritual reality and brings God down to the world, his presence to the world, and his perfection. The world is imbued with God's perfection in line with whatever that particular commandment is possible, has the possibility of achieving. So each one's got a certain sort of qualitative sort of energy. Yeah, it's got certain qualities. When a person keeps one of the 613 commandments, you bring down a certain energy through that channel, right? And a certain aspect of creation is fixed. And the idea is, through the Jewish people keeping all 613, you have all the channels coming down, and the whole of creation will eventually get completely rectified from its state of evil. Like that's how we described it in our very first Keystone lecture. That's why God creates evil, and know that we've got the ability to bring that goodness into the world. Right? Now, this is what Purim is all about. The Jewish people, right? This is what the idea of eating from the Suda, eating from the feast of Achashverosh. This was the problem. They thought, well, okay, we've got Jews, right? We've got our spiritual laws. Yeah, we've got a very important job in the world. But, these non-Jews, they're quite moral people. They're just as well. Yeah, so let's join in with their customs as well. Be nice with them, right? But they didn't realize there's a danger in that. Of course, you've got to act in the countries of the non-Jews in accordance with their laws. You've got to help the society, be a positive member of society, but don't go so far in thinking that, oh look, they're just like us. Yeah, their laws are like our laws, right? Don't think that in exile, because now the Jewish people are in exile from the destruction of the first temple, which happened about 70 years earlier, right? Maybe a bit less, right? Don't think you can adopt the moral and just laws of the non-Jewish society as well, because this is the first step in a slippery slope. That's a bit of a contradiction. The first step in a slippery staircase, right? Of Jews eventually, because remember, we don't have the security of being in the land of Israel now that we're in exile. We don't have the temple. We don't have prophets to keep us in line. So therefore we have to be self-sufficient. There's a danger here. If we start admiring the non-Jewish ideals in themselves, obviously there's good things in the non-Jews as well, because they are capable of making a moral society. But if we do that without thinking, without being aware of the pitfalls, we start to lose our Jewish identity. We start thinking, well, yeah, we've got the Jews, which keep our festivals. Unfortunately, this is what happens today. Took 2,000 odd years, but we have things like the Reform movement and the Conservative movement, where you ask them, right, what's Judaism all about? Yeah, some of them still keep some of the commandments, but which ones do they keep? Passover, which is very commendable, it's very important, it's essential, right? I'm not criticizing what they do keep, right? They go to the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the New Year's, right? They hear the shofar, they do circumcision, right? So that's almost universal, even amongst non-religious Jews, as long as they realize they're Jewish. But what else do you know about Judaism? No, nothing else. So what makes you a moral thing? Well, no, because you've got to keep the law, right? You can't steal, you can't be dodgy in business, because you get caught, you get... 1 minute, but the same God which commands you to keep the Passover, right? He commands you to be fair in your dealings, to make sure you're honest in business, right? Don't rely on the laws of the non-Jews, right? Because as we can see, this is what the point is going to be here, right? Is that once you slide into there, you start thinking, oh, so that they're also moral, and then you start thinking their laws are equal to the laws of the Torah, and therefore that will create a sort of atmosphere, or whatever's the word. Create a background where Jews start to sort of think, oh, non-Jews not so bad, so let's do more of the stuff which non-Jews do, and then they start to forget what our job is. And this has been borne out in reality. We see that's what's happening today, unfortunately, with so many Jews eventually assimilate, they forget they're even Jewish, right? Some of them, unfortunately, and definitely losing Jewish identity, intermarrying, so you can't bring the children up as full Jews with with God's job for the Jews, role for the Jews intact anymore, because they're going to get mixed messages from each parent. If the Jewish parent is even going to bother teaching the child anything Jewish. So that's a danger, right? The Jewish people eating at the meal of Achashverosh, the feast of Achashverosh, this was such a terrible sin, not just because mixing with non-Jews is such a big sin in itself, but because of the danger. This creates a danger which risks God's whole plan for creation. This is going to be the first step of Jews abandoning the faith completely at the end, and then there's no one to fulfill God's plan. And therefore, as we said, like, if there's no one to keep the Torah, then the whole world just is destroyed. Like that mountain, keep the Torah, otherwise death and destruction. The world can't function without Torah, because there's no point for the world. The world's not for this world. The world is in order to bring God into it. There's no one to bring God into the world through free will, like we explained in the Keystone lectures. There's no point for creation. Creation is only in order that God can be totally at one with mankind, but He'll only do it through free will, right? So everything's going to fall apart. So therefore, this eating, this very subtle, very minor, seemingly minor problem of eating at the feast of Achashverosh was absolutely deadly. It was a fatal mistake, right? Spiritually and ultimately physically as well. Okay. So God revealed through the story of Purim, right? He didn't just punish them just to get at them, right? He punished them in a way which woke them up to the realization of what their mistake is. So what did He do? He showed them, right, you think that non-Jews laws, man-made laws, doesn't have to be non-Jews, it could be even Jew-made laws, but if you make them up yourself, not based on Torah, this is what can happen. You can end up with corruption. If you have a new leader, he can make new rules, but based on his own biases, his own desires, and his own, corruption, right? Like we have with Haman and Achashverosh, right? Yeah, of course, don't kill. Oh, but only can't kill humans who are part of society. If you've got certain people who are a danger to society, well, the society is more important than individuals or a certain nation, so we have to get rid of them, which is what the Nazis did, essentially, right? They rationalized killing Jews, and this is what Haman did with Achashverosh. The law itself can be unjust, right? So keeping the law religiously in itself is not a good thing. It's a thing which makes society function, but sometimes the law can be just wrong, right? Imagine the time of Nazi Germany. Someone's sheltering some Jews who are trying to hide from being sent to the concentration camps. They'd be breaking the law. They're risking their own life and their family. Is that the right thing to do? Is that the righteous thing to do? Is that the just thing to do? Yes. Is it legally correct? No. So this is what was going on in the Purim story. God showed them that if you rely on a legal system which is detached from a spiritual reality of God's sort of like imbuing his his knowledge and wisdom into the laws themselves, then you're doomed to failure. It's almost like a body detached from a soul, which is death. Right? Even the laws, the physical laws, have to have a spiritual grounding in them. Right? And thankfully nowadays, most of Western civilization are both based on Jewish Torah ideas. Right? They call it the Judeo-Christian sort of laws or ethos. I can't remember what the exact word they use it. Yeah, but because that's how they took from the Jewish laws and put them into their own religion. Okay, so there's a lot of good things there. Ultimately, but laws might be just, but they don't have to be. They're not inherently good. Laws, man-made laws. Now the Jewish people realized why the Jewish oral law, the Torah, is righteous. Yeah? Because it's something which has got that permanence. God understands how man works, what human nature is. Right? So even when it comes to mundane things, which we can't work ourselves, and most of the time we probably could, if we're being unbiased. But the problem is you won't always be. So therefore, you just happen to be lucky you live in a just society. Following the Torah guarantees you're going to have a just society. Right? Justice for the poor, the downtrodden, justice between man and his friends, justice in business, between man and wife. Right? All the different laws which we have in the Code of Jewish Law today, which we wouldn't categorize as ritual laws, we would categorize them as civil law. That's the word I was looking for before. Okay, so this is the message of Purim. It seems a bit strange to make a whole festival just because of that. Now let's go into it a bit deeper. Right, so we understand we've got one sort of like thing to grasp onto. Yeah, we've got one hook for us to connect to the idea of the festival now. Let's go deeper. Right, so in the Megillah, right, we say Layehudim after the victory over Haman and his sons and the Amalek of that time, right? Because Haman wasn't actually a descendant from Amalek physically as well, not just a spiritual Amalek. He was actually physically Amalek as well. He's from that nation. It says Layehudim haisa oira v'simcha. The Jewish people had light and simcha and happiness. We gave you should know what simcha means. We gave a whole lecture about simcha, happiness. So we understand why they were happy. They were relieved and happy that they survived the terrible decree of Haman. But where's the light? Where's the light come from? What is this light? So this is the light of the Torah, which the Jewish people didn't fully accept on Shavuos. 1,500 years earlier. As we said, the Jewish people, the written law we accept. The oral law, that means things which we can work out ourselves, we don't need God for so much, right? But now they appreciated, no, everything that is in the Torah is necessary, and everything connects us with God. Now we truly appreciate the light of the Torah. So now the Purim is described as a second acceptance of the Torah, right? That which the Jewish people only accepted through coercion the first time round at Sinai, which is the oral law, now it says Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim, right? The Jewish people Kimu, they established v'kiblu and they accepted. So the rabbis darshan, they expand on this verse. They Kimu Masha Kiblu. They established now what they already accepted. That means they already accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai, but through coercion, the oral law. Now they established it through their own desire, through their own volition. So they're happy to do it now. So essentially Purim is the giving of the Torah, but on a completely new level. right? In fact, it says in the very first Mishnah in Tractate Avos, right? We spoke about Avos in one of the lectures before, right? It starts off the very first Mishnah. It deals with ethics and morals and yeah, and lessons for good midas, good character traits, etc. Yeah, but all based on Torah, of course. Yeah, that's the whole message of Purim here, right? Right, that even morals and ethics have to be based on Torah, because any other basis for morals and ethics is flimsy and and vulnerable for corruption. So it says Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. Then he passed it on to Joshua. And Joshua passed it on to the elders, and the elders passed it on to the prophets. And the prophets passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly, who you remember we spoke about at length in the previous Hanukkah lecture, so we won't go into it too much there. Please look at that. Yeah, so, to understand this lecture, you need to spend another 24 hours going through so many other lectures, but try your best. So each one of those stages brought out a new facet of the transmission of Torah from one generation to the other. Obviously, the very first one is Moses receiving the Torah from Sinai. Of course, the Jewish people all heard God say the Ten Commandments, but the details, the oral Torah, was given through Moses when he learned it with Aaron, his brother, and the 70 elders there, right? Then they passed on to Joshua. That was a new aspect of Torah. That's maybe the Torah of going into Israel. The Shul and Nevi'im, as the Zakanim, the elders, then the elders to the prophets. There's a new aspect of Torah being brought out there. And then the Nevi'im Lashekes Agdola. Then you have the prophets give it over to the men of the Great Assembly. What did they do? Right? Yeah, Mordechai was one of the men of the Great Assembly. We're talking about, this is the Purim story, essentially, we're saying here. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the Nevi'im gave it to the Anshe Knesset Gadola, the men of the Great Assembly, and that includes Mordechai. Mordechai is was actually the head of the Great Assembly at that time. Later on, he was demoted. That's another discussion. Right at the end of the Megillah, he got demoted to 5th place, whatever that means. Right, because maybe he was involved in the Persian government after that, so he wasn't able to fulfill his whole focus of studying Torah the whole time. He had other obligations. Whatever the explanation is there. But anyway, so this is a new aspect of receiving the Torah. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about receiving the Torah now in a way where even physical, man-made laws are seen just to be basically expressions of God's law, right? Real, proper, fair, righteous civil law is based on Torah. That was a new aspect which they had here. That's why the Mishnah speaks out specifically as a new aspect of passing on. Obviously, each generation passed to the next generation, but the Mishnah groups into big chunks, big eras. The era of the elders passed on to the era of the prophets. The era of the prophets passed on to the era of the men of the Great Assembly. That's what we're talking about here. They're passing on this aspect of Torah where we see God even in the most mundane laws. Okay. Okay, now let's go into some of the mitzvahs of the day. And we'll see some beautiful ideas now. So hopefully we're wrapping up now. Oh, not so long for one of my lectures. Okay, so let's have a look. So let's look at the more simple mitzvahs and we'll understand how it goes. Now, since the idea of Purim is to show that even how to get on in society with your friends, with your neighbors, with the people you meet in humans, not with God, so to speak, even that needs the imbuing of the direction of Torah, to tell you that, and the spiritual, and that imbues every mundane action with spiritual significance, right? And that means every time we pay up our worker on time, or we repay our loan, or we're careful not to take something which is questionable, right? Or to borrow something without permission, right? Right? Every time we do that, we're not just being good people, we're actually perfecting the creation by bringing God's light into the world through those seemingly mundane actions. We're revealing that there's no such thing as a mundane action. Everything is holy, potentially. Right? So what we're doing, so the message of Purim, on one aspect of it, is the idea of getting on with other people, being mandated by the Torah. So therefore we have mitzvahs, commandments, to get on with each other on Purim. Right? So that all the mitzvahs of Purim are many of them are all geared to engender a certain love and friendship, right? Between different, well, specifically in Purim, between different Jews, right? Ultimately, right? That can go on to non-Jews as well. But the focus is to make sure the Jews are unified, right? Ultimately, we're trying to make people friends with each other, have a love for each other, to appreciate every other Jew, and ultimately to create a unity amongst Jews. Now, this is really deep now. This is very deep. So you have to hold yourself, hold your focus here. What happened at Sinai? Right? At Sinai, the beginning of chapter 19, I think, of Exodus, it says, Vayichan Shom Yisrael neged Ahor, right? And the Jewish people, they came in the third month into into Sinai, and they camped Vayichan Shom Yisrael neged Ahor, opposite the mountain, right? It doesn't say Vayachanu, they plural, encamped by the mountain. It says Vayichan Shom, and he, that means an individual. What's individual? Rashi points out that even though many of the journeys throughout the desert, the Jewish people were complaining, there were fights, whatever, right? Here, there was absolute total unity amongst the Jewish people, right? It was I wouldn't say unique, but it was almost like a unique event. The Jewish people were so harmonious. They were called Vayichan, he. The Jewish people were one entity, right? Why is that important? Because they're about to receive the Torah from Hashem, from God. Now, if you remember our very first lecture, the Keystone lecture, that we have to be similar to God. In order for God to give to us, we have to be similar to Him. So in as much as we're givers, God gives to us. So therefore God acts sort of like as a mirror to the way we act. So if God is about to give the Torah, what is the Torah? We explained on the Shavuos lecture. The Torah is essentially the revelation of God's light, which unifies the higher and lower worlds together. That means, in the most basic understanding, is that the Torah tells us to do physical actions. So you're saying that God's up there, but the uniqueness of the Jewish people is that we believe sorry, we believe in the idea of bringing God into the world in the physical, because we believe that God is not separate from the physical world, right? He's intimately connected with every aspect of the physical world as well. So the idea of doing physical commandments, like eating, sleeping even, putting phylacteries on anything, holding a lulav, blowing a shofar, these are all physical actions. We're revealing that things in the physical world is also just a vessel for God's light. So what are you essentially doing? You're saying that people might think we got heaven, that's God's realm, and then you got the physical world, and we do our good things here, and then we go up to heaven, and then God rewards us checking what we did down here. No, that's not what the commandments do. The commandments bring God into this world, or his presence into this world. You've got to be careful how you say these things, right? They bring God's light into the world, his revelation into the world, right? So the Torah is a way of connecting God to this world, of unifying the world with God. Remember the third keystone lecture, right? We're going to speak about that again later on. So if the giving of the Torah is the idea of unifying God with the world, right? So you want unity, God says, you show me unity. So when we create unity down in this world, God reveals his unity, which is his unity with the physical world, which means he gives us the Torah. So therefore, when God gives us the Torah, there has to be unity down here. It's an amazing idea. I hope you understood it. It's absolutely, it's astounding. So therefore, that's what happened on Shavuos. God, right, when he spoke the 10 commandments, what did the Jewish people see, so to speak? Right? They saw a type of knowledge. We spoke about this in the proofs, in the sort of the preamble of the proofs of God and the divinity of the Torah. In the preamble there, we speak about what the Jewish people actually did experience, right? Or think in one of the later on, maybe we explained it in the first of the two lectures about the proofs from Sinai. As Rashi describes, he tore away the 7 layers of heaven, and they were able to see there is nothing but God. Ein od mavada. It doesn't mean there's no one else besides God. There's no one but God. That means he's the only reality. Right? What are we then? We spoke about that in the second keystone lecture about what is God. Okay? There's a certain aspect of our perception of reality, but the truth of reality is there isn't anything except God. And that's a paradox. It's a paradox. So, but the Jewish people were able to perceive that paradox. That's what they saw at Sinai. And that got drilled into Jewish people's hearts. The idea of, we exist, but that's not somehow not a contradiction to God's being the only thing which exists. It's not that God's made up of parts. God is a total oneness, but he's not. We are somehow not a contradiction, and that's the whole process of the world to come, to get a higher level of realization of how we are intrinsically nothing, but yet we are all. But yet God still created us to be able to appreciate that. Mind-blowing idea, right? Unique in Judaism. No other religion has this idea. Therefore, unity is needed for God to reveal his unity to us. That's the unity which he revealed at Sinai. He tore open the heavens and showed. Torah says, you were shown to know. This is chapter 4, verse 35, I think. 34, somewhere right there, 39 as well. Right? You were shown to know that there's no other Hashem Elokim. God is the one who's the all-powerful down here. Ein od mavad. There's nothing else besides him. There's nothing else. Right? Up there, down here, it's only God. He's the only power. 3b of the Keystone Lectures. Right? So unity is essential for the giving of Torah. In fact, the rabbis say that the Hashem Shekhinah, his divine presence, only rests on a certain number of Jewish people when they're together, right? Vahi b'shur melech v'saseh rosh hayam yachad shivtei Yisrael, it says in chapter 34 in Deuteronomy, is in the congregation of the king, Assassination, when the heads of the people come together, Yachad Shivtei Yisrael, right? Only when there's a unity of the tribes of Israel. Only when there's a unity of tribes of Israel, Vahi B'Shur and Melech. Then God is the king over he's called the king. Yep. So what happens on Purim? Purim, we have a new acceptance of Torah, part B. Accepting, but it's a much deeper level of accepting Torah. We're not just accepting the Torah where God reveals himself as the only being, but we're in a situation where we can perceive it. Yeah, we have to believe that even in exile, even though we don't experience it, he's still here. That same God is totally one with the creation, is still one with the creation now, even though it's completely hidden from us. And that was a new aspect. That's the idea of what they didn't accept at Sinai, they accepted now, and therefore there has to be a new unity amongst the Jewish people on Purim. That's why the festival of Purim is just emotionally, it feels a very unifying festival. Everyone's so happy with each other, we're hugging each other in the streets. Maybe that's part of the getting drunk, get rid of inhibitions. Even the most timid people, it's very interesting to see on Purim. Even the most timid people, they're so friendly and they're acting like an extrovert. It's a quite beautiful thing. Okay, where are we holding here? All right, let's see if we can finish by 2 hours. Wow, that'll be a new thing. Right, so that's the idea of the beauty of the unity of the Jewish people on Purim. The unity in order that we can accept this new aspect of Torah, a higher level of unity than the one we got at Sinai, where the unity was that God is the totality of everything, but we only get to perceive it sometimes, only when we're in a perfect state ourselves. Purim tells us that even in a place where we don't perceive it, it's still absolutely true, just the same. Right? Now, what other mitzvahs do we have? So we have the idea of the giving presents to friends, giving charity to the poor, that engenders a unity. The meal, you may invite people over. Right? The idea of the meal is as well the idea of taking something physical, the most base physical desires which a person has is to eat, survive, right? And we elevate that, we make it into a mitzvah, into a commandment, a way to connect with God, right? And remember, we spoke about the different souls of the Jewish people correspond to the different exiles. Persia, the exile of Persia was the second of the exiles, corresponds to the nefesh, the soul which is connected with the physical existence of any living being, even plants and animals, right? So that's the idea of eating, right? Right. So we rectify the eating we did wrong in the exile, which tempts us to partake in the physical and to use the physical as something in itself. Right, we spoke about this in the Armageddon lecture about Persia and maybe about the Arabs and Muslim, Islam as well. Maybe, I think we touched on this. So in that very festival, or that very exile, where we were drawn to the food, we fix it by fasting 3 days. And we celebrate now by having more food, but now the food, we realize, is not just a nice social thing which we have with our non-Jewish neighbors or even with our Jewish friends. Yeah, it's not just a nice excuse to indulge, right? Which makes us think that we've got our spiritual, keep the spiritual stuff in the synagogue. The physical things we can be like the non-Jews. No. There's no such thing as God not being in part of your life. Yeah, when you're physical, you also bring God into it, right? And in fact, the rabbi said that one of the merits they had for being saved was at the feast of Achashverosh, even though they shouldn't have been there. So talk about the bad Jews who went, right? They were singing on the Shabbos. This is when Vashti was told to come out appearing in front of everyone, Queen Vashti. What was happening just before that? The Jewish people were singing praises to Hashem, to God, on the Sabbath, right? It was their Shabbos meal, right? Interesting, Shabbos, again, they're elevating the physical, so that's a merit for having a Purim, where you elevate the physical, the eating, the meal. So much. So that's the meal. The idea of the meal is the rectification of this detachment between the physical, mundane world and God. We're showing everything is connected with God. God's in everything. Right, so that's the meal. And what's the fourth commandment which we have? The reading of the Megillah. Right? So what do we see in the Megillah? What essentially is the Megillah? We spoke at length the first 15 minutes of the lecture, what the whole story of Megillah Esther is. The Book of Esther, the scroll of Esther. Megillah means scroll. We're going to see it means something else in a minute. We see the crazy story of the salvation of the Jewish people, but it's very interesting. God's name is one of the 24 books of the Tanakh, of the Old Testament, you would call it, non-Jews. It's the only book. Well, maybe Shim doesn't as well, but I think it's the only book which doesn't have a single time a direct reference to God in it. We know there are many allusions to God. They're hidden, like sort of skip codes, or the first four letters. The first letters of four words in a row spell God's name in many places. The last four letters of some words. There are many allusions of God, but God's always hidden in the Book of Esther. Right? Whenever it says the king, and it doesn't say the king Achashverosh, the king also, on a deeper level, is referring to God. God was doing something just like Achashverosh was doing something physically. God was doing something on the spiritual level, and you have to reinterpret the verse differently to understand what God was doing on his level, which paralleled what was going on down here. Yeah, as we say, that God was controlling Achashverosh in a way, like a marionette with the strings, puppet. Right, so we see that. Why is that? Why is God's name not mentioned? It's because there's no open miracles in the Book of Esther. It's incredible. We go through the whole thing. Right, we spoke about the angel putting him down. Yeah, you can attribute that to sort of like he fell over and he was sort of panicked. He had a sort of like he froze out of fright. It's not that he couldn't get off the bed of Esther, right? He just froze. You can always interpret it differently, right? It's not like water turning to blood or God speaking directly to Jewish people. Right? That you can't explain it through any rational, naturalistic way. But the crazy human decisions is the miracle of the Book of Esther. That's precisely what God's plan was. God's plan was, I'm going to manipulate people's minds. Everyone has free will, but I'm showing you that ultimately it's not contradiction to me controlling things. So let's have a look. Look at the crazy miracles where God was clearly directing things, but you would never call it an open miracle. Achashverosh wanting to show off his wife, right? Why would he want to do that? He's a king of the nations, right? And because two like lowlifes were having an argument, and he had this rule which he made, I'll do anything anyone wants. You want food from this country, from that country, I'll bring it to you, yeah? You want to sit on this type of chair, whatever, you want to have this type of pleasure, no problem. I own the whole world, I'll give it to you, right? We want your wife. All right, so come on, there's a limit, right? No, he said, no, bring Queen Vashti in completely just with the crown. The king, his wife, it's mad. It's a moment of lunacy. Lunacy. Doing something which a person rationally wouldn't normally do. God pushing him. Secondly, Haman, what did he say when they're trying to discuss what should we do with Vashti? We should send her and shame her, make a proclamation. No, Haman came up with a different idea. Kill her. And the king says, okay, we'll kill her. What? Even if he's drunk, don't kill your queen, especially the one which you're boasting is the most beautiful woman in the empire, and in fact was the key to Achashverosh being the king in one way, because he married the daughter of Belshazzar, which was a Babylonian king, which gave him legitimacy amongst the Babylonians. Killing him would only make the Babylonians like be angry with him. It made no sense. But he said kill her. No sense. It's not a miracle, but it just doesn't make sense. It's not, well, there's something weird going on. Number 3, now he needs a wife. What should the king do? The king of the whole world? I should get the most important nations, Russia, America, or whatever it will be in those days, marry a daughter from them to make an alliance with the countries which might be the biggest threat to me. No, let's have a beauty contest. Woo, she looks nice. Oh, she looks nicer. Okay, well, 9.5, 7.4, right? For a king, it's not like America. You got Miss World or Miss Universe, whatever it's called, right? I'm talking about the king of the world, right? You don't marry based on looks, right? Okay, well, you could say Persia was, as we said, all down to the physical desires. Okay, but still, it's unusual, right? Right, so what does he do? He's got loads of beautiful women who all want to be the queen of the world, right? There's one woman who doesn't want to come. She gets kidnapped anyway, and forced, because, right, for whatever reason, the soldiers thought that, we've got to take her. She had a greenish complexion, which made her not so attractive as you a normal woman would be off the bat. And on top of that, she was an older lady, and she wasn't even a virgin. She was married to Mordechai. And she won the contest. What's going on? This is just weird, right? It's a bit like the Havdil, don't make parallels. You see these weird sort of things happening throughout history, because God's always controlling things. How on earth did Trump become the president in 2016? And how did Biden become the president? A total fool, right? Who wouldn't even appear to any interviews. It's never happened before. Everyone's always trying to show off, being the media's face as much as you can leading up to election. But no, he kept out he was in his basement, locked away. And he won the election, the year 2000, right? Right? You can see God's hand in that. This is not unnatural. That's not how the world works, right? But it's not a miracle. You can explain it rationalistically, Well, people were fed up with the status quo. They wanted someone new, refreshing. All true. But no one predicted it beforehand. Most of the geniuses who know how the world works, and that can't happen. So Esther, suddenly the queen. No one would have predicted that, but she was. It worked. God's hand. Now you have Mordechai in the king's office, in the king's palace. He just happened to be standing near Bigson and Seresh, the two officers who were plotting to assassinate the king, and Mordechai happened to understand their language, as we explained. You just happened to be next to them while they were plotting in their own language and not whispering, because they thought no one else would understand their language. That was another essential key to the salvation. All of these things I'm mentioning now are essential to the Jewish people being saved at the end. Achashverosh wanting to show off his wife without that, she wouldn't have been killed. Without her being killed, Esther wouldn't have been the queen. Without Esther being the queen, she wouldn't be able to do the whole story at the end of exposing Haman. Right? Mordechai needed to be able to report these two officers to Achashverosh through Esther, right? And causing Achashverosh later on to realize that Mordechai was actually on his side. And as we explained before, right? Causing the king to have doubts about why does Haman want to kill Mordechai, and why does Esther want Haman at the feast? So put two and two together. Oh, Haman wants to kill me, right? But he has to kill Mordechai, and there's no one who can snitch on him. So therefore, Mordechai had to have that respect from Achashverosh, that gratitude, by revealing the plot of Bigsan and Seresh. Now, point number 6. I've got them all numbered here. I've got 13 points here. Right, I'm going to do the other variant. Okay, skip number 7 here. Right, think about it. So imagine you got the king, just his life saved. You know, he's at the pinnacle of his glory. I've got the whole world, and then 2 people try and plot. That was a chink in his armor, and he got one really loyal servant who warned him, you do anything to glorify and put him into prime minister position, do whatever, you definitely reward him. You definitely show some gratitude, give him a medal or something. He didn't do anything to Mordechai. All he did was it was written in the Chronicles. The Chronicles were not especially for people who saved the king. Therefore, any things to do with the royalty or the empire. Oh yes, Mordechai saved the king. Right, you know, we can put this tax on. Mordechai saved the king's life, as if it's just another fact. That doesn't make sense. He doesn't bother rewarding him. He puts him in the Chronicles of the history records. Didn't bother doing anything to him to reward him, right? Then you have Haman was elevated to the prime minister. How did that happen? Haman was the one who told Achashverosh to kill Vashti. Right? You could say, well, he's happy. Oh, I'm glad he killed Vashti because I got Esther now. Okay, but still, he before Esther was the queen. Haman was the head minister, right? At least the day after, when he realized I killed Vashti, who told me to kill Vashti? Haman, you're fired, or worse, head off with your head. He elevated Haman to the prime minister. Oh, you could say Haman was a master manipulator. All right, but it's unusual, right? God made Achashverosh think, put Haman in charge. Okay. Now, Esther wants to make. He realized that Haman was getting everyone to bow down to him. Yeah, I think even Achashverosh. I think I remember once saying that Achashverosh was bowing down to Haman, recognizing him as a deity or something, as an idol, right? But he was worried that Haman was going to kill him, right? Especially after Esther invited Achashverosh and Haman for a private 3-person meal, just the 3 of them, right? So he's thinking, well, if there is a plot going on, I haven't heard any rumors. 1 minute, have I actually had this before, where someone did something good to me, saved me, and I didn't reward them? So because of that, he asks for the book. So this sort of fear which was implanted in Achashverosh's mind, this sort of paranoia that someone might be plotting against him, Haman might be plotting against him, caused him to look at the book. Right? Another miracle. It's a hidden miracle. Right? Right? What caused him to look at the book in the first place? And he ended up looking at the book, and the night where he couldn't get to sleep, maybe because of the worry, he asked for the book. On the very same night, Haman was coming to ask Achashverosh to permission to hang Mordechai. So let's think about that. First of all, he couldn't sleep, so okay, why ask for a book? Okay, you think you're going to find in the book a whole set of chronicles, you're going to find the one story where a person tried to help you? All right, okay, so he asked for the book. Yeah, totally natural. Yeah, he was worried, he wanted to look for someone who did good to him. You can explain it rationally. But then he got the book which had the story of Mordechai in it. Remember, this is he's been king about 10 years now, or something like that, right? Maybe more. And he asked specifically for the book, and they opened up the book, and that was a book with the story of Mordechai in it, and they turned to the page where Mordechai's story was on. Out of all the thousands of pages, I'm making it up, but I'm estimating, must be hundreds or thousands of pages in all the chronicles, he turned up to the one page where Mordechai was mentioned. Right? Amazing. And then just God made him stay up, so he made him so anxious he couldn't fall asleep. Right? He found the page. And we know that Haman's son was the scribe. And Haman's son obviously didn't want him to find out about Mordechai. So what happened? He was trying to turn to a different page. The wind blew it back onto another page. So he tried to turn the page again. The wind blew it back. So he said, Achashverosh said, just read it already. So he had to read what was there. So Haman's own son brought Haman's downfall and Mordechai's ascension. Right. Then Haman, for some reason, decides, I'm going to go to Achashverosh to ask him permission to hang Mordechai when, in the middle of the night, where Achashverosh would have been sleeping if he wouldn't have had this insomnia. So you talk about literally in the middle of the night, Haman's coming to Achashverosh to wake him up from his sleep. What are you thinking, Haman? I've got to kill... He had Mordechai derangement syndrome, MDS, right? I've got to kill Mordechai at all costs, right? Trump derangement syndrome. So I don't care. I've got to go to the king now. I have to just confirm it. I can't think. I've got to kill him. I've got to get the permission so I can get on with it. Incredible, right? And that's because of that. That was just after the king had, because of the sleep problem, he looked up the books, and because of the books, he saw that Mordechai was actually one person who actually was the most loyal of his subjects, who saved him from assassination. Just when Haman was going to come in to tell Achashverosh he wanted to kill Mordechai, right? So the irony is incredible here, right? The timing is just perfect. And so instead what happens, Achashverosh asks Haman, oh, hello, Haman. He doesn't bother finding out what Haman actually wanted. But before you start asking me what you want, what should a king do for someone who wants to glorify? So Haman's thinking, well, okay, must be me, as we said before. And he said the whole thing with the king's horse and the king's clothes, should let him ride through the street as if he's the king. And this is only strengthening Achashverosh's suspicions and confirming them that Haman seems to want to be the king a bit too much, right? This looks very, very suspicious, right? But anyway, he said, so he said, fine. Anyway, I didn't mean it for you, Haman. I meant it for Mordechai. And Haman's like shocked. So therefore, the next day, I guess, he goes, he does the whole thing. He leads Mordechai out, and the whole story. His daughter throws the feces on him and jumps out the window. So everything's going wrong for Haman now, right? Yeah. So the timing is just perfect here. Yeah. Achashverosh is worried about someone assassinating him. Specifically, ignited this fear was ignited in him because of Esther inviting Haman to a private meal with just them and Achashverosh. And then Haman's coming in. He suggests he wears a king's clothes. That Achashverosh understood that Haman probably did it because he had thoughts of aspirations of being the king himself, just like he suspected beforehand, which caused him to look up the book to see if anyone would protect him from an assassination attempt. So the timing is just perfect. And then we have the story when Esther accuses Haman, right? and we have the whole story, but he goes out, he tries to calm down when he finds out that Haman's trying to kill his wife, right? He goes out and then he sees his orchard. The one thing which could calm him down was a beautiful orchard, the fresh air. And he sees it's all being cut down, makes him even more angry and irritable, right? And he finds out it's because of Haman it got cut down, right? The royal orchards have been sort of like desecrated because Haman wanted to build this gallows. Then he comes in, he sees Haman falling on the bed, right? He tripped over. You can explain that rationally, right? He tripped over. He was frozen because he knew how much trouble he was in. You know. I'm sure everyone knows. You get caught doing something you shouldn't, and then you get caught. What do I do? And you panic. You just freeze. Yeah, you can explain that's what's happening with Haman. And then the king still didn't want to kill Haman despite all of this because he was maybe scared of him or whatever. And then he sees the Charvona tells him, Haman, he's done bad. The Charvona just speaks of that. Yeah, he just made a gallows to kill Mordechai on. So Achashverosh says, what? Haman, you wanted to kill Mordechai, the one person who protect me? Now I know that you want to kill me. Look, and you're even lying on top of my wife. Hang him now, right? He's completely full of rage, as the Megillah says, completely out of control, and killed Haman. And that was the beginning of the final parts of the salvation. Amazing. And all of it, you can explain every single stage rationally. Yeah, it makes sense. It could happen. It's unlikely. It's unusual. But that's what God does. In nature, he, like we said by the Hanukkah story, God also hides, who is like the mute ones, Hashem, God. Yeah, because God sees people rebelling against him, subjugating his nation, his children, right? And he keeps quiet because that's how God's actually going to bring the salvation from them, ironically, right? God's in control even in the darkness. That was the Hanukkah message. Here we see the same thing here as well. Even though things are hidden, God's in charge and God is bringing salvation. And not just bringing salvation despite the darkness, he's bringing it through the darkness. He's bringing it through Haman himself. Haman created his own downfall. He got hung on the gallows which he made himself. Yeah, because he came in at that time to say hang Mordechai, that caused the whole thing about him leading Mordechai through the streets and him getting the stinking and depressed because of his daughter and being covered with feces and coming into the meal of Achashverosh smelling disgustingly, right? So Achashverosh was already in a bad mood with him. So all those plays, God's playing with Achashverosh's emotions the whole time. Yeah, that's the idea. The king said. We think it means Achashverosh is really the king of the world who's saying it, as the rabbis interpret. Yeah, so that's what the Purim story is all about. The idea of revelation of God here in the physical, mundane world, in the world where even the mundane laws, civil law, is revealed to be nothing without God's light imbued in its laws, right? The physical world itself doesn't stand alone without God guiding it behind the scenes towards the purpose of creation, which is the ascension of the Jewish people, who then reveal the Torah and reveal God's knowledge, the knowledge of God to the world, and through keeping the commandments, imbuing God in the physical world, which makes the whole world better spiritually and physically. This is a true Gilu Yichud. Remember that third Keystone lecture? That God runs everything, even the world where you might think it's not God. That's the highest level of perception of God's power, is when you would think that God's not in charge, but yet it's revealed that he was in charge all along. This is Gilu Yichud. There's no other power besides God. And that's why it's called Megillas Esther. So for the Hebrew speakers, it'll be a bit easier this, but for those who don't, Megillas Esther. Megillah means a scroll, literally, and Esther is the name of the queen. You can also read, so Megillas, Gilui, like we just said the word, Gilu Yichud, revelation of God's oneness. Right? Gilui, Megillah, can mean Megillah, means the revelation of Esther, means Hester, which is hidden. Hidden. It's the revealing of what is hidden. That's what Megillah Esther is you're looking at something where God is literally hidden in the Megillah. He's hidden because you can't see him, and he's hidden in the Megillah because he's there, but you can't see him. Megillah Esther is revealing God hiding behind the scenes. We're revealing it that he was the one in control the whole time, even though he's not explicitly there. That's Megillah Esther, the Gilui of the Hester, the revelation of the hiddenness, which is the whole message of Purim. Just showing that God is in nature. Right? Right? This is why we wear the costumes, why we get dressed up. Right? When a person gets dressed up in a costume, you can't tell who the person is. Right? You see the person's there, but he is hidden behind a facade. Yeah? I think you're something else. You're a pirate or a soldier, right? Right? But who is this? I can't tell you. Look carefully. It's you. That's what's happening. What's God's facade? When God dresses up, what's his as? Rabbi Tatz calls it world mask. What's God's mask? Nature. Nature or chance is God's costume. Yeah? You look at the world and say, oh look, there's a lot of random things, a lot of coincidences happening here. Well, too many coincidences. Oh, it's you, God, behind the mask. That's why we get dressed up on Purim. The idea of telling us a message that God's, what we see now in exile, we see natural events happening, world political events, small events on the individual level, right? Nothing's random, nothing's by chance. Everything is pre-programmed. This is for Jews, non-Jews, everyone, right? Every single detail, every blade of grass is growing. Every single thing in the world is functioning the way God wants it precisely, because everything together is bringing the world to the purpose somehow which God wants, which is what we see clearly in a much more blatant way in the Book of Esther. That's the idea of the masks. Okay, now why do we speak about Amalek? I'm not going into it so much, but what's Amalek's message for the world? Mitachas hashamoyim, yeah? Destroy the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Right? Speak about the he tailed off you the weak ones, which means he attacked you at the tail, the weak people he attacked. But Rashi explains he took the zonav, he took the tail, so to speak. He took the circumcisions, the foreskins, which were from this is the medrash, whatever this means, whether it practically happened or not, but this is definitely the idea. Yeah, they circumcised the Jewish people. They took the foreskins of the Jewish people who had the circumcisions and threw them up to heavens and said, keep your bris milah, keep your covenant of circumcision up there. What's he saying? Because the idea of the circumcision is you're showing the sanctity of the most base physical desire, the urge to have relationships with women, and that desire, right? The idea of circumcision is elevating us, showing that no, cut off, limit that pleasure, right, to a certain extent, right, and show that there's holiness in even the most mundane things. That's the message of Purim, like we've explained at length here. Amalek says, no, you keep it. We're not interested in having you, God, down here. He's not an atheist, he believes in God. but we're not interested in you down here. We don't want your mitzvos. We don't want your commandments, your way of connecting with the physical world. Therefore, it says, destroy him, Amalek, from under the heavens. Because where does he attack? He attacks under the heavens. Between heaven and earth, he attacks there to separate heaven and earth. Purim is, and given the Torah specifically, Purim is, no, in every single aspect of the physical world, it's all God. There's no under the heavens, right? God's everywhere, actively. And that's why it says in one of the meanings of the word Asher Korcha Baderech, who called you off on the journey. Asher Korcha, there's three meanings. We spoke about this last year. I'm not going into it again. One of the meanings was he called you off on the way. Right? I hope that doesn't hurt anyone's ears. Sorry about that. Talking too long here. Right. Korach Baderech can also mean he enchanced upon you. He randomly bumped into you. Chance. It was by chance. It wasn't the predetermined epic battle of the two forces of creation, the Jews against Amalek. No, yeah, it just happened to bump into you. Chance. You want to say there's such a thing as chance? No, we have to destroy that. The nation which says that this world is just chance and random, no connection with God, right? Who say that militantly, people who don't know, who are not sure about God. We're not talking about it. We're talking about people, a nation which says no, categorically there is no God down here. This world is completely chance, right? That is a nation where we have to do spiritual battle and ultimately a physical battle. At the end of days, it'll be a physical battle as well with these people. Because chance, they're the nation of chance. Okay. Right, so this is also the idea. So we're answering the last few questions now. We said at the end of the day, the Jewish people did accept the Torah, even the oral Torah, which we explained to do with relations between man and his fellow man. So what was the damage of that? Why was it so serious? Because this is the difference between two levels of revelation of the Torah. At Sinai, the revelation was revealing that God is everything, but the people who perceived that were in a state of perfection. And we can perceive this very high idea because they've gone through the Pesach, the whole Passover, the smiting of the firstborns. They went through the sea, which they reached the level of prophecy. We haven't spoken about that before, I think. They've gone through the 49 days between Passover and Shavuos. We spoke about that. We had a whole lecture about the three-part festival. But this still leaves a doubt. Because that's temporary. What happens when they leave Sinai? What happens when they go to the land of Israel? What happens if they go into exile? Right? We need to have a new revelation that God is one, even in the physical world, in a situation where we can't perceive it, where we're not on that level to perceive it. And we still see that even in the most lowest times, we're outside of Israel. We've just been exiled by Babylon 70 years ago. Right? Now we're living in Persia spread out through the whole world, right? At the time of the Purim story, right? As opposed to the land of Israel. The land of Israel, even though it's a physical world, it has a certain quality about it where it's easy, where God reveals himself much clearer in the land of Israel in nature than all other lands, right? It's another discussion for another time. Look at beginning of chapter 11 in Deuteronomy, right? It speaks about the land of Israel. The eyes of God are on Israel from the beginning of the year to the beginning of next year, right? God looking after the land of Israel, right? We can see what's happening now. Even we see lots of miracles happening in the land of Israel with the battle against the terrorists. But outside the land of Israel, that's a land of complete mundaneness, the 70 nations, where they don't have this natural connection with God, and God is hidden in the outside Israel. But yet, God reveals in a place outside Israel. Hanukkah didn't have that. In Hanukkah, at least it was in the land of Israel. In Purim, it was outside Israel. So, and this was not just in exile, they were facing destruction of the whole universe, because if the Jewish people perish, which that was the danger there, right? Then God's got then God's planned way to reveal himself in the world through the Jews will be gone. Then the whole world will cease to exist. Right? And who was trying to do that destruction? The ultimate enemy of God, Amalek. So in the time of the greatest darkness in human history was just before the Jewish people were about to be wiped out. Right? There God reveals, I'm here as well. I'm not going to reveal myself. I'm going to leave it all to chance, and you're going to see that it's all me. So all these different elements are coming into play at the same time. The idea of the Jewish people realizing the futility of legal laws. Yeah, they can be twisted from being just to being unjust easily, right? The idea of God hiding, the idea of God revealing himself through random events, through chance. The new receiving of the Torah, going back to Sinai, bringing Sinai to the exile, to while they're still in exile, right? This is why Haman, we spoke about the 50 amas. Why did Haman build a tree which is 50 amas? 50 is always a number of transcendence. The number 7 represents nature. 7 by 7 is 49, which is the expansion of the number 7, which is the idea of the totality of the natural world. The number 50 represents the idea of transcending the physical reality. So Haman was saying, I'm so powerful, right? I'm going to take an 8. Remember the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden? It's connected. I think we spoke about that last time. You can listen to that one again. I'm sure you want to after this, right? So taking the tree again, the tree of 50, the tree which transcends the world, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people. Mordechai is the head of the Jewish people on the 50, because the 50 is mine. I own 50. I have everything. I am a deity. People bow down to me now. The arrogance of Amalek, of Haman, yeah, is I don't want morals. All I'm interested in is in me. Everyone serve me. Right? I don't care about mankind, morals, ethics. Like a certain person wrote in his book, Mein Kampf, I think it was called, right? Yeah, we have to destroy the Jews, Achashverosh to say that, because they bring a conscience to the world. Maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was one of his underlings. They bring morality, they bring a conscience to the world. The Jews are the conscience of the world. So Amalek wants to destroy the conscience of the world. They want the world to be animals. They want just survival of the fittest, or survival of who was lucky, survival of the luckiest, chance. That's who they're about. That's what they're about. Yeah. Why? Because I determine reality now. I'm not just in nature, 49. I'm above nature. I determine nature. God says, oh, you want to touch 50? You want to go into my realm? Keep climbing. 50th level of impurity. Those who know that reference. Flip it on its head. When you get to when you transcend the physical world, you see it's all God clearly. So you try touching that, you just stuck your hand not in the plug socket, in the power station, right? So that destroys Haman himself. And by doing that, he's revealed that all the forces in nature, this was the best opportunity that, even spiritually, I'm not going to that, Haman did have an opportunity based on what spiritual things were going on in the very, very, not just the heavens, the very, very high worlds, Kabbalistically. I'm not going to go into that. The world of Atzilus, 2 of the Paratsufim were turning back to each other, but that left a vulnerability of the backside of them, which is where evil can get in, and Biyonik can draw on the spiritual energy. I'm not going to explain that at all to people who are not well versed in Kabbalah. That it's way too much. So Haman really would have been able to do it, yeah, despite God's protection for the Jewish people generally. It was this point in time where there was a tiny moment, a small window where the Jewish people genuinely were vulnerable, and God did a spiritual miracle to protect them. A spiritual miracle. He changed the way that the world functions at its root. Right? That I'm not going to go into, but there's the Gili of the Ateres Yesod of Abba. For those who understand what that means, that's what Mordechai was. Mordechai corresponds to the Ateres Yesod of Abba. It's one of the different ways that God reveals himself, the much higher way than he usually reveals himself in the world. So even though his way of running nature was vulnerable, there was a transcendent one where he permeated down into the physical reality, which protected the Jewish people through a supernatural way, but it was still enclosed in that natural Zerampin and Nukva revelation of how he runs the world, which is the natural way he runs the world. So basically combine the two together, but he still hid it. For those who understand that will blow your mind. Okay, let's finish off now. Almost finished. So that's why he made 50 yamas. He tried reaching all the way up there, and God says, right, now you get the real revelation. You reach up here, you see that when you reach high enough, behind the scenes, it's all me. So that's why everything was turned, and the level 50, which Haman was trying to access, actually became one of the biggest revelations of the 50 of God. That's why you have a new giving of the Torah. And what day of the Omer, after Passover, was the Torah given originally? The 50th day. This is the giving of the Torah all over again, but now on a level where it's through all the negativity in the world, all combined, the most evil point in history, you could say, there God is. God's there. Everything gets turned upside down. The more the world looks evil, eventually, no, a bit more evil, the most evil, now you're going to see it's all God. And there's no doubt anymore that there's any other power in the universe besides God. Because this is the point in time where evil was at its zenith. And beyond its zenith, it transcended. It tried to transcend. Amazing, amazing idea. So the transcendent level of this 50 itself is the revelation. The evil is just a tool of Hashem, of God. And the 50th level of evil is revealed to be, it was always God. Right? Now we understand, beautiful, beautiful idea. So who was the true hero and villain of Purim? Pause the video, I'll give you a few seconds to give you answers. Who's the true hero and villain of the Purim story? Right? Human logic would say, physical human logic without the Torah, well, Mordechai was the hero, Esther was the hero, and Haman was the villain. Right? That's wrong. The whole message of Purim is that it's all God, it's all Hashem. Right? You have Mordechai doing his good things, right? Esther doing her good things, Haman doing his evil things. It all led to the salvation. It didn't matter which actor it was in the story, everyone's part led to the salvation. You couldn't have a Purim story without Haman doing all his evil, trying to rebel and trying to be dominant and trying to wipe out the Jewish people. And you wouldn't have it without Mordechai and Esther. on the good side. So that's the message of Purim, that everything is God, everything is Hashem. That's why we get drunk. So we can't use our physical, intellectual, logical, human logic faculties anymore. We get drunk until we don't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai, oh, blessed is Mordechai, the hero, or Haman, cursed is Haman, the villain. You get drunk, no, I can't tell the difference. It's all God. There's nothing besides God. So we speak about the Keystone Lectures, they're all very intellectual. On Purim we feel that. And we feel that realization which we had at Sinai. Well, it's all God. Now we say, yeah, it is all God, even when God's not trying to reveal himself. I don't want to say it like this. God can't help it but be the only one in charge the whole time, because he is the all-powerful, so to speak. Not the best way of saying it, maybe, but you get the message over, I guess. In fact, that we know that the word Baruch Mordechai, Beis Resh Vav Chaf, Mordechai Mem Resh Dal Chaf Yud, and Orur Haman, Aleph Resh Vav Resh, Orur, and Haman, Hey Mem Nun. Yeah, the numerical value, the gematria, we might have spoken that once before, every letter of the Hebrew alphabet corresponds to a number. You add up the numerical value of blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman, they're exactly the same. Because at the root level, at the elemental level, that's what gematria is. It's you're breaking up concepts onto the elemental level, where the letters of the aleph base are the elements, right? And the atomic weight of both these things, they're the same. They're the same. The atomic level, yeah. They're the same element, basically. It's the same idea, because they're made up of the same number of atoms or whatever, same atomic weight, same gematria, right? And we spoke about the Sud as well, that even the physical aspects are all for God, right? And that's why it's its own festival, right? That question, why Purim? Why there'll be many persecutions of the Jews which we've been saved from, but this is the archetype. This is the ultimate paradigm of God protecting the Jews and saving them in exile, where he's not going to reveal open miracles. It's a revelation which is necessary. This is why this is the Yom Tov. This is the festival which lasts forever, right? Which doesn't become nullified or loses its importance in the future, because this is the ultimate highest level of revelation of God in the world, that God is everything, not just when things are good, when things are the absolute worst, where there's absolute tragedy and destruction of the whole universe ultimately at stake. God's the one totally in control the whole time. There's no such thing as chance, randomness, or getting unlucky. God worked out things perfectly. He's perfectly controlling everything. And yeah, even though people think they have their own thoughts, God's guiding their minds in one way or the other in order to bring the world to its perfection. All we can do is just choose to do good or bad. That's the only thing we can do. But the other ideas we have, it's all God guiding even our thoughts and our free will ultimately, which is the highest level of oneness, like we spoke about in 3b in the Keystone lecture. That was the point of that lecture, that even free will God guides, paradoxically. And that is the ultimate revelation of God's power, which is our ultimate experience of God's goodness ultimately. Okay? Because that's the reality of God. The pleasure of experiencing God is experiencing the maximumness of God, the totality of God, which means that whatever dimension, situation, reality you're talking about, it's all God. And that's why Purim is its own Yom Tov, its own festival, because it brings out this idea of the totality, that it's impossible not to be God now. Whereas at Sinai, we revealed that God is everything, right? But now we're revealing with Purim, it's impossible that God is not in everything, right? Even in the darkness of exile, God's presence and control is permanent, it's absolute. And that's the message of Purim. total oneness of God. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. I think we answered all the questions. Yeah. Right, and wish everyone a happy Purim. All the best.